Therapy Geeks, a podcast by Luke McGibbon and Louise Taylor.
My background noise.
Welcome. We've decided to branch out this week into effects.
Which ultimately is probably what we are for many people.
Well, I guess we are a kind of background noise, aren't we, for people, that we provide something to do while they cycle. And I'm talking to you, friend of the show, Roy McSwiggan. And I love being
Is
able
that
to
when
say
he
friend of the
listens
show.
to he said when he was cycling?
Well, he did at least once. I mean, he sent us a picture shortly after we released one of the last ones of him on his bike listening to it. It was very
I
sweet.
thought he was on a train.
Maybe I just wasn't looking. He did another video where he was on a bike. He might not have been necessarily listening to us then. Yeah, wow.
Well, send us in your photos.
I set out to compliment a friend of the show, and I ended up just going. I wasn't really paying attention. He was doing something. I ended up sort of backhanding him.
This is a great example of reality as an illusion.
Yeah,
You
great
create.
example of respect or lack thereof, which is what the show is about today. Actually, oh.
The show's about respect, and I respect our postman. Who's
Yeah,
just
sorry, that's why I just went, nope, because he just parked right up to the door there.
So yeah, the show is about respect.
Yeah, well, yeah, find out what it means to me.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit, not too much. If you find too much about what respect means to me, you might be repulsed.
Oh God.
Actually, you know what, that song makes me a little sad now that we're talking about it, because she sets her standards so low. She's saying, just a little bit. Could you please just a little bit learn what respect means to me, for God's sake? It's such a little thing to ask of somebody, isn't it?
Well, is it though?
Well, yeah, this is one of the things actually I wrote down recently, because it was one of the harder subjects for me personally to have a think about, because I think you just assume that respect is implied in your behaviour, whereas it's often completely subjective. Isn't
Yes.
it? So, for example, in my workplace, I had a friend who, I say had because she's left the country, not because we hate each other now, but I had a friend who was Russian, and we had this on the last week that she was in this country. We had this strange tiff, and the tiff was that she had sent me a text, and I had seen it, and I had not responded. And I feel like 50% of the population totally gets this, and 50% of the population fucking hates this right now. People are turning against me in their droves as we speak. But the thing about texting and online messaging isn't it, that it can be quite throwaway, or you can look at something when you're in the middle of something else and go, I'll respond to that later.
Yes.
And then to completely forget, which is what I did. But she was incredibly upset, and she said that in her country, I don't know if this is true for any Russians listening. I don't know if we have any Russian listeners. She said that in her country, to not respond to a text like that is the height of disrespect.
Oh.
And well,
It's the height of it. Can't get much worse.
Murder, fine. Don't answer this text.
Oh,
Get
wow.
out of my fucking life, tovarish. I think that means friend, doesn't it? Get out of my life, tovarish. I don't know. I didn't learn much Russian
Wow.
from someone who had a Russian friend. But yeah, and it was very interesting, because what that set off was a chain of events which showed me something that I find very important, which is that she chose to respond by I feel like I'm trivializing it by saying the silent treatment, but it just sort of ignoring me and stuff in work. And I don't know why that just presses my rage button.
Yes.
There's something about it that just activates something in me that is just like, well, fuck you. Because I think it's completely okay to be angry at me. I mean, maybe it's a bit much for not responding to a text, in my opinion, but I think it's, and you feel what you feel, and I'm going to say, it is okay to be angry at me, but I think to completely refuse to talk about it, I mean, you're disrespecting yourself as much as you are disrespecting me, really.
Yes.
I really did a bit of inner work on it, and I did remember I had this memory. I used to piss off my older brother so much when I was younger. I was such a little twat, to be honest, and you know, he was no bag of roses either, but I wound him up so much, and my mum would always say to him, just ignore him. And then there was like 1 week where he actually took my mum's advice, and oh my god, it worked so well. Because him ignoring me, I think I can't remember what happened, but I just remember being so and just enraged. I don't know what it was, which I guess that says to me that maybe I had some sort of, not toxic, but maybe an unhealthy relationship with my brother at the time, where I must have needed that negative attention from him. Because even for him to be pissed off at me and that to be taken away is suddenly just like, I think I was more annoyed at my Russian friend for more adult reasons, because personally I think the silent treatment is a response to a problem that should be ditched by the time you're like 10. Like, but I don't think adults should be doing that, but that's maybe that's me.
No, I actually think you're actually highlighting how rubbish most of us are at, many of us, at communicating during conflict.
Oh yeah.
But people are so scared. Why could she not have communicated like in a respectful manner?
Sure.
I really didn't like it. Like the height of disrespect in her culture. Okay, I actually think that possibly is an dramification. What is the word?
I guess over melodramatic.
But also it tells me that she cares about you. And she was hurt, which is an indication that you matter to her.
Yeah.
But also, what's wrong with saying that? Yeah. I was hurt. I would have liked you, because actually what she was doing was she was filling in. The emotions were actually telling her a story that wasn't necessarily true. Now, I don't mean to be rude, right, to you. No. But we do communicate a lot.
And I'm bad at it.
But I don't take that personally, because I know you'll get back, or you have other things in your mind, or you're not being cruel. It's not a personal thing. It's just like, all right, I'll get back. And then you'll be like, oh God, sorry, I didn't mean to. Here it is.
Can I be candid and say that it really does mean a lot actually to me that you're very, I don't know if forgiving's the right word, but I think you have a lot of faith in my ability to self-correct or perhaps self-flagellate, you know, like a lot of people are very capable of punishing themselves, and I think maybe punishing is the right word, but I think you recognize it in me and you never make me feel bad about it at all, and I imagine it's because you can see that I'm perfectly capable of saying that it was not great. And but
you're respectful. It doesn't in any way tell me it isn't indicative of our relationship or our respect that you take your time sometimes, or you forget, like that's where we put emphasis on things that are actually pretty insignificant. Things, we give them meaning by our beliefs.
Yes.
And her beliefs are possibly she responds very, very quickly. So in her mind, she thinks that people who don't must be possibly wrong, which is, with all due respect to her, a distorted way of looking at a single act.
No, absolutely. And I'm completely with you on that as well. And it's funny you should say that, because like we did have a chat about it eventually, which was lucky because there was 1 week to go, and I'm not quite sure how to respond to behavior that I do find immature like that. I was a bit enraged, not just because of those obvious psychodynamic reasons with my brother, but also because we work with adults with learning difficulties, and they could see that she was sort of pretending I wasn't there or not responding to things I was saying, and it did have an effect on their lives, because some of the things I'd be trying to say to her were very much work related.
Yes.
Like, are you going to be here for dinner later, because we're cooking for 10 people and I need to know if I'm cooking for 11, and I'm cooking with an adult with learning difficulties who needs to know this shit, so,
yes.
Like to me, that I think that touched a protective button in me too, as well as a rage one. But I'm talking too much about myself here. We're talking about the other side, but
I love that too, because I think it is about respect. Because what happens often, and I've been guilty of doing this, and other people, when we are met with something that we perceive as disrespect,
Yeah.
often we respond with disrespect.
I have to say I'm nodding because I keep forgetting this is audio, but I am nodding.
Yes. So because actually positive communication, asserting ourselves is often something that a lot of us fear, whereas we feel this entitlement. How dare you?
Yeah.
Yes, how dare you treat me like that?
Yeah.
Whereas actually when you're like, what happened there? What happened? Inquiry,
Yeah.
communication. Because what often people feel entitled to completely disregard and ignore other people, which is a reflection of the value they put on them and the respect. And that's what I'm going to read a bit about the definition, because we love the definition. So I'm going to read the definition of respect, because I don't think we're taught this.
No.
So respect, this is from the big dictionary. Feeling of deep admiration for someone, elicited by their qualities or achievements. Okay. Polite greetings. Oh no, this is what this is my favorite one. Due regard for the feelings or rights of others. Right.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Particular aspect, point, or detail, and feel or have avoiding harming or interfering with, right? So to hold, I see it as you're holding someone in high regard. You're honoring them as an autonomous human being. But to do that, there must be communication. There must be tolerance, acceptance, empathy. So in terms of speaking about respect, where are we taught to be that? Because we're often taught, and I was saying to you this earlier, we're often taught that respect is obedience, whereas I argue respect is oppression. Or obedience is oppression.
Yeah.
Respect is not oppression, but respect is not obedience.
Well, I guess, yeah, and I suppose what we're talking about there is education as much as it is parenting too. That I mean, how do you teach something like proper respect? And I think that maybe earlier institutions in the past sort of said this is as close as we can get, essentially, or that at the time it was the same thing, that you respect your elders, and that's obedience to your elders. Respect people in a higher position of authority. That's obey people in a higher position of authority. It was a very hierarchical structure, and life still is hierarchical, but I think people are eager to move away from it.
Yes, and I think if you mindlessly obey people, you are putting yourself possibly in a lot of dangerous relationships and situations.
Yeah, well, you're not listening to your own sort of, your own organismic self, as Rogers called it, which is that part of you that knows what you need and knows what's important to you.
Yes.
When people say, listen to your heart or listen to your gut.
Yes.
That's the bit that's being ignored whenever you mindlessly obey.
Yes.
Yeah, and respect isn't hierarchical either. That true respect isn't hierarchical. I think obedience is it's like a surface level respect, isn't it? Because you can obey someone and still think they're a piece of shit.
Yes, and this is it. If say I was out with Lucia in a restaurant, I was like, please sit down and be quiet. She said, actually, I don't want to. I don't feel like sitting down and being quiet. To many people, that is a disrespectful child. But also, but I'm trying to get her to respect. Say she's not causing a commotion, but I'm just thinking I'm maybe a bit embarrassed. Just sit down so we look normal.
Sure. So yeah, well, because this is it as well. I guess respect is something that's between two people rather than from one person or to another. That because you're saying that what you're describing in that scenario was it? Did you say Lucia or Lily?
Lucia.
Lucia was essentially doing what we were saying earlier, which was listening to your organismic self saying, "Well, I don't want to, screw you. I want to shout and scream." But you said you were able to reach her by sort of appearing on a level of mutuality, saying that I'm a bit embarrassed.
But this is it. It's not. It's kind of given a scenario where we force our ways on people for various reasons. Like we may be projecting. This is what a mother does. This is what a child does. A child sits and is seen and not heard in a restaurant and just lets us get on with it.
Yeah.
Whereas actually, I've said this before, the problem with having empowered children is they're empowered. So they won't necessarily, this didn't happen. This is an example of, she would challenge me about things if she doesn't agree with what I'm asking her to do. Now, that doesn't mean that she's doing things that are, I don't consider them disrespectful, but other parents would. So, like, one of the things, she won't wear a coat a lot of the time. So that, and there's things that she does not like doing. But I, as a parent, don't believe in forcing her to do things. Like, I'll carry the coat with her, or, you know, but it's kind of like, to many people, they would see that as her, I don't know, they think that's disrespectful.
I personally, I don't know if everyone's like this, but I personally feel that I learn better from making mistakes.
Yeah.
And I like, there's a lot of very good advice that I've ignored as an adult, kind of because of that. And, you know, I've learned it in a much better, more organic, sticking way, you know?
Yes.
For example, you know, speeding. I haven't sped in about 4 or 5 years because I had to do one of those speeding courses in like 2012 or something, and you know, that's terrifically boring. I mean, that's maybe not enough to learn something, but it's a negative consequence that I earned rather than had imposed upon me.
Yeah, because you learn, like, you're gonna make mistakes, but also I do think that they are our greatest teachers.
Yeah.
And also I can suggest wearing a coat to Lisha. I can guide her. I can inform her of the reasons why coat wearing is good.
Yeah.
But actually, I also respect the fact she's just like, no, I don't want to do it. But we'll bring it along, but it'll go on if I fancy. And then she will get cold, and she maybe think about it. But she's a thing with coats.
Yeah. Fair, and that's fair enough.
Whereas wood, and this is not, I do not have the answers. It's a discussion. Would me forcing her, physically forcing her to wear coats, because it is like, is that better parenting?
See, yeah, this is an interesting thing, isn't it? That I've obviously got no children, but I feel like I've got a parallel experience. It's not similar, because I think there's a big problem with support work for adults with learning difficulties is people assume it's like parenting, whereas, you know, in parenting you are kind of the final authority, whereas like in support work I can't say do this because I said so, because that's against their human rights, you know.
Yes.
Which is ridiculous. So I mean it would be ridiculous to force them, is what I'm saying, but I think support work's more like marriage than parenthood, because it's like negotiating, which is kind of what you're talking about, like that you have to sort of mutually agree on something rather than go put on this coat because I say so. And well, I guess you could do a sort of cost benefit here and say, well, if you physically made her wear the coat, I mean, sure, she's probably gonna be warmer and she's less likely to get a cold. What are the cons? I guess.
Well, and this is why I parent this way. Why I parent this way is because I want them to know they have a choice, and they don't have to mindlessly follow instructions.
Right.
And that we are all equal, and nobody is better than them, and they are better than nobody else.
Yeah.
And their voice matters. They matter. How they feel matters. And that is why, because in my work with domestic abuse, in the schools that I'm doing, or in the work I was doing in the schools, and I've just recently had to stop it because things have taken off, I think it is very dangerous in the long run to teach people that respect is obedience. It is very dangerous in terms of abusive relationships in adulthood, because you could be in a very controlling relationship where somebody is telling them that they are disrespecting them because they are not following their orders.
Right.
So that's why I look at the bigger picture. And I think I want my children to know what respect is, so that they can very easily identify when they're not being respected.
Right, exactly. So, well, the con is that in the future, well, and the con is that in this moment you're putting them in the hierarchy, you're putting them in their quote unquote place, and then that means that in society they're going to feel like they have a place rather than they define their own place. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm saying that, well, it's kind of like this here. You matter.
Yeah.
You get to choose. So if they're just used to that, because that's one of the things I think that they find really weird when they can identify being disrespected very easily because it's so odd to them.
Yeah.
And that'll keep them safe because they are not treated. They are not, they're not controlled. Like, of course, we keep it safe and we all there's a lot of negotiation and it's a lot of what are we doing and how, so we'd have family meetings like, this is not working, listen, and how are we going to make this better because of the way we live and like home educating and working and all that. So there's a lot of collaboration. Yeah. But I actually find them very respectful, very cooperative, very well informed, and they challenge me on my distorted thinking sometimes, the things that maybe I've learnt and carried from childhood, the things that I was taught that actually no longer serve me. Yeah. My children go, well, why do you think that? And I'm like, thank you. Yeah.
Well, you let them affect you. And whenever you put them on a hierarchy, they're afraid to affect you, I suppose.
Yeah, because they're
I'm not going to question Mummy. She knows everything.
Yes, and they're dominated, they're controlled. So that is one of in the work, domestic abuse, and domestic abuse is a huge problem. In this, it costs, like, you are much more likely to be abused by somebody you're in a relationship with than a stranger. So actually, I think I take that responsibility that I want my children to be respected and valued, but they also, that's why it's so important to me that as a parent I respect and value them,
right?
Because that's the lesson that'll follow them for life. Yeah,
they learn what it looks like,
they know what it feels. And that's where in the schools, the child who said to me, and that was such a beautiful moment, I was like, how do you know you're being respected? And then I heard this little voice and it was like, you feel safe.
Oh, that is nice, isn't it?
Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah.
He was just like, you feel safe. And that, I think, is the crux of respect. And that's what we do in our sessions with clients.
We make them feel safe.
You make them feel safe so they can be themselves.
Yeah, like even the most, I guess even some of the practical forms of psychotherapy always have that stage of stabilization before they have processing,
Yes.
You get them safe, you get them stable.
Yeah.
You create a space, you contain, as Bion would say, or hold, as Winnicott would say. And I guess like, and what you're saying sort of, sorry, I spilled some water there. What you say kind of echoes, I guess, what we were talking about earlier with my work colleague, that me not texting back, regardless of it being a trivial action, made her feel unsafe in terms of friendship. I actually am kind of eager to conclude that story because I felt like I left it hanging a little.
Oh,
yeah. Well, it was the very last week that she was working there, and I think like I gave her plenty of opportunities to talk about like quote unquote adults. I sent a message saying, "Hey, if you've got a bit of problem with me at the minute, if you like, would you be able to talk about it in private, and then we could sort it out." And they were initially refused, so I, enraged, typed up this very, very long message saying, "I've given you loads of chances to act like an adult, blah, blah, blah. If this is how you deal with your problems in life, you're going to have a lot of problems in life, blah, blah, blah." And then I showed it to my girlfriend because it was cathartic for me, and she was like, "Well, I'm sure you feel very good about yourself, but don't send it." And I didn't. And eventually my friend from work actually did come and speak to me about it, and basically just said what you're saying, that like, of course, I said at the first that at the start of the story that she had told me that in her country it's the height of disrespect, but what she also said was that and you have to keep in mind, I haven't really said this, but she was a person who was quite vulnerable emotionally, said that that basically it made her think that I hated her, which I know this seems like it does seem like a big leap, but this is what people say whenever they feel vulnerable and whenever they are courageous enough to say that, because it's hard to say something that sounds like that, that says, "I just didn't think we were friends anymore, so I started acting like it," and I know.
Isn't that heartbreaking?
Yeah, it is. It really is. And like you can just sometimes people will say something and you can just see all those past pains in their face.
Oh.
There's obviously so much history there, and so much pain and vulnerability, you know. But
Yes.
anyway, all patched up. Um,
Oh.
and then they went on their merry way.
But you know what? I love my memes and my quotes.
Oh,
and
yeah.
that reminded me of a quote
Good.
that said, the measure of a person's success in life
Uh-huh.
is by how many uncomfortable and awkward conversations they're willing to have.
Yeah.
And I love that.
I feel like the ability to have uncomfortable conversations is the best thing you can put in your CV, isn't it, as well? Because
Yeah.
nobody wants to have the conversation where you have to tell someone they're being a dickhead or their job's in danger or something like that.
But yes, well, this is it. Boundaries.
Yeah, well, exactly. Or
But-
that someone's violating their boundaries.
Yeah, but like also like, you know, who are we to say who's a dickhead? We can only say what
true
we
too.
think.
That's true
or
too.
who we are. Like, I didn't like that, so
Yeah.
I would be a big fan of. I didn't like it, so I didn't like that,
Yeah.
or I didn't agree with what you did, and you know,
That's sorry, maybe dickhead's the wrong word, but that they're being disrespectful.
yeah,
themselves.
dickhead. But dickhead's a great word too. You know, it's all right to say you think people are being dickheads, but it's also good to reflect and think, what's this tapped into in me?
Yeah.
What is this telling me about myself?
Uh-huh.
Because we are not perfect. We, you know, the idea is complete. But we are human.
Yeah.
So things tap into us. You
Yeah.
tapped into old wounds with
Yeah.
her.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
It's self-worth.
Without meaning to, I definitely did.
And,
Yeah.
and actually you sitting holding space. Holding space.
I'm
and-
sorry, I just noticed how defensive I was being there as well. Could I can I rewind whenever I said, yeah, I didn't even mean to. Yeah, like like me trying to absolve myself now. Even now. Months later, you know, crazy.
But I think a respectful relationship and a respectful friendship is you are willing to have those uncomfortable, awkward conversations.
Yeah, yeah. To sit down with someone and say, you know,
Yeah, this is how I felt. But it's like I felt like not supported. I didn't feel that was very kind. And we're all going to be different in terms of what our buttons are,
yes,
what our emotional responses are, how we perceive things. So I just think, you know, that is people often will avoid conflict, but actually that avoiding the actual conflict, which is not not beating the life out of each other. The conflict is the disagreement.
sure.
There was dissonance. There was a disagreement there between the both of you. There was a lack of understanding about what was going on, and it wasn't until you had the conflict and you were able to move and create and move on from it and produce a positive outcome.
Yeah.
I think that was great. I think you handled that pretty well.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, and you know, I think the frustrating part of it for everyone is that, like, you can do a lot on your own, but eventually it is going to take two. And eventually, she was very courageous, I think, in saying, "Okay, I'm ready to talk about it now. I'm going to talk about it."
What a woman.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be so raw and honest, because she didn't have to say it, made me think like we weren't friends.
And I
She
really
said.
respect that, because
Yeah.
what I have found is whenever sometimes if I say, look, I didn't like this. I like with family members, friends, I didn't like what you did. I'll be ignored.
Yeah.
They feel like it's okay to completely disregard you. It's okay to completely ignore you as an individual. And that actually now at this stage in my life, I'm like this. That's all I really need to know.
Right. Yeah. Like it's one of those defenses that people have, isn't it, against guilt, is to try and invalidate the other person's feelings.
Because I don't do that to people. But then I do think I respect myself a lot and I respect others.
Yeah.
So I don't ignore it. Now, so if somebody gets and they say something I don't like, I will respond, but I will respond respectfully.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean they always perceive it as that, because sometimes people think if you're not agreeing with them, you're disrespecting them.
Yeah.
But that's a lack of maturity, actually.
Yeah.
You know, that's an immature way of looking at things. Like, and that's possibly more a reflection maybe of this culture and this society where people think if you don't agree with me, you're disrespecting me, which we can see in our politics.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, we can see that level of disrespect for the opinions and the feelings and the rights of others.
And it just becomes my side versus your side.
Yeah.
You know? I'm gonna win no matter what the cost. You know.
Yes.
I mean, bipartisanship is completely dead in America. You know, like nobody cooperates across parties over there anymore. Like, I think they used to actually have quite a good tradition of it, and the Good Friday Agreement here is itself its own act of bipartisanship. We agreed, and then we stopped. But we had a big one. We had a big agreement.
Yes, but that was what I was saying to you about going to that Hillary Clinton talk when she was getting her honorary degree. And no matter what you think about her, she said that democracy is process, not paralysis. If you want to work on peace, peace is an active process. You need to be engaged. You need to engage for peace to survive. I thought she was incredible. Now, I don't agree with a lot of the decisions she made, but I thought whenever she made her speech about Northern Ireland, like, she was bang on.
Yeah.
She was basically like, pull your finger out and sort yourselves out.
Yeah.
Come on now, this is too important. Yeah, she was like, this is too important. How could we be here?
Yeah.
Like, after everything that everybody went through, how are we here?
I mean, peace isn't just not fighting, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's what she said. It is process, not paralysis.
Yeah. That there's still many massive gaps to be bridged.
And that's it, people. And that was maybe something about the culture here. People leave it to other people to sort out. Well, that's not my job.
Yeah.
Actually, we're all responsible.
I think that's why some people don't vote as well. They're just going, well, someone else will sort itself out. It'll sort itself out without me. It won't, mate. You have to vote. Sorry.
Yes.
Do you know what? Like, I would totally respect people who don't vote if they were just honest and said, I just don't know what's going on, or I'm lazy. But it's all that nonsense about, they're all the same, you know, all that shite, or my vote won't count. Oh, fuck off with that. You know, that's absolute nonsense. Just say you're lazy. Just say you can't be arsed. Like,
just say you didn't register.
That's fine. That's fine. That's honest. Just don't bullshit me and try and like diminish all the people who do vote. You know, who do have an active role in trying to shape the country, you know, whether for better or for worse. Like,
yes,
at least they're standing for something, you know.
And you're the ones hitting the street, the we deserve better.
Yeah,
they're getting out there, marriage equality, all those. They're hitting the streets and they're going, actually, we really, really care.
Yeah,
because if you're saying it doesn't matter, I'd say you don't really care.
Yeah,
that's possible, and that could be self-esteem.
Well, it could be. It could be a feeling of distance. It could be loneliness. Like, you feel
depression
isolated from society. Yeah, absolutely.
Depression is not feeling hope.
Are you saying that not voting is a symptom of mental illness?
No, well, it could be part of a bigger
no,
picture. I'm just saying, well, if you feel there's no point, that would be one of the...
Should we add democratic apathy to the DSM?
Well, I'm not into labels that much, but I am good into self-awareness and knowing, right, okay, I feel very hopeful, very optimistic and very passionate, right?
Despite it all.
Right? But so, if you don't feel hopeful, I would say something's not right.
Yeah. Well, that's true, yeah. Or if you feel... I do think that actually ignorance is a pretty decent excuse as well, just to go, politics looks complicated. I don't know what any of this means. Like, you know, I wouldn't have understood politics as little as maybe like 3 or 4 years ago. Like, I was not politically engaged beyond just voting. I was not politically engaged at all beyond that until the 2015 election, and it was the reason is so weird. I don't know what it was. It was whenever like Ed Miliband and Nick Clegg and Nigel Farage temporarily resigned, and it was all on TV, and they felt kind of like these background characters in my life who I didn't hate, but I kind of liked them. You know, like Nick Clegg seemed like a nice substitute teacher, and Ed Miliband seemed like a weak substitute teacher. And Nigel Farage looked like a horrible substitute. They all look like They all look like substitute teachers now to think about it. But they just seemed like these background characters in my life that I hadn't realized I was partly invested in. And you know, I was voting, but I was voting for people who I trusted to be better informed in my family, such as my brother or my mum and dad, was voting for people who they told me to, and I didn't actually know. I didn't actually know if they if they jibed with my political beliefs, and I did like a tiny bit of research, and then suddenly every history class I ever had came back to me bit by bit, and like it didn't actually take that much learning because a lot of it has already been put there by like just society. Yeah, but yeah, and my vote hasn't changed at all, to be honest, but it's an informed vote now.
Yes.
And I'm able to actually talk to people about politics rather than go, oh, I don't know, mate, I don't know. Because, saying I don't know means to some people that means let's have a debate right now. And then, I'll end up voting UKIP at the next election because somebody spoke to me for 40 minutes about immigrants or whatever, with some convincing sounding statistics that aren't based in facts.
Well, I loved somebody I was talking to recently from, older generation, and they were saying that like the politics, there were some parties that they considered like just unrealistic. But then I think, well, that's idealism. And that's considered maybe quite immature.
Yeah.
So but I think that's optimistic.
Yeah, well, what is the difference between optimism and idealism?
Yes.
I mean, I guess, idealism is basically seen as blind optimism, isn't it? When someone says you're being idealistic.
Yes, but then what's wrong with that?
Nothing. Like, well, in my opinion, anyway. I think blind optimism is something that's thrown around maybe a lot. And it's often thrown at people who are just optimistic. Yes. By people who are pessimistic.
Yes.
But there is such a thing as blind optimism. Like, it's like driving without a seatbelt because you'll be grand. That's blind optimism to me.
Yes, but you see in that conversation.
Yeah.
That was what they said. They don't vote the same as me. They don't believe the same thing as me. We had a cup of tea. Incredibly respectful.
Yeah.
We didn't lower my opinion of them. Didn't change the way I thought about them.
Yeah.
It was a great informative conversation where we both held completely different views.
Absolutely. And that's brilliant for once. Sorry, I completely didn't. I was about to keep going there, and without even acknowledging that is brilliant. But one thing that popped into my head when you were saying that was that I've met loads of people with completely different political ideologies to me, and been able to have completely respectful, lovely conversations with them. And it says to me that oftentimes, like, voters are more dignified than politicians. Like,
yes,
regardless of their stance. You know what I mean? Like, I've met. I would never really vote for the DUP in my life, but I've met plenty of DUP voters who are like nice people,
yeah.
And I shouldn't treat them like the DUP politicians who, have the same views as that person, but are, a lot less respectful.
Yeah, well, but you see, but the thing is, and this is where the quote's coming in. I've got Einstein here.
Oh,
with a wee quote.
I'll.
So I think what you're saying is more. So it's like kind of like I speak to everyone in the same way, whether he is the garbage man or the president of the universe.
Wow.
That's how I feel, and I think that's maybe come in more in my life because of my training as a counsellor, because of whatever, because that respect, just hearing that person, honouring that person as an autonomous human being who is not like you, but they deserve respect by the very virtue that they exist. Yeah,
well, okay. I would hearing that quote though as well. I would still encourage like self-monitoring, because I feel like I feel like there are some terrible people out there who feel that they do speak to everyone in the same way. Maybe they just speak to everyone in the same terrible way.
Oh my God, I love it. Right.
I speak to the garbage man the same way I speak to the president of the universe, but maybe you're a dickhead to the president of the universe as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I have a tendency to be a dickhead, or you're dickheads to me.
Yeah.
I'm like, right.
You're
bringing out your dickhead. You want to see a dickhead? Here it goes.
and this is totally what I was going to do with my friend at work whenever I typed up that big letter, and luckily I was talked down from sending it, and then we were able to have a respectful conversation after we treated each other disrespectfully.
Yeah.
That it's I guess sometimes suppress your dickhead. Oh dear.
Or the odd time, just let your dickhead out so you can learn. You can learn how to not be a dickhead. Because sometimes it's in your dickhead moments that you create great personal growth.
Yeah,
right?
that's true. That's so true.
You know.
Uh,
But there was something I put up, and it was a really good conversation with a friend because so I would have talked in these that I'm spiritual, right?
uh-huh.
And a lot of my friends are like kindness at all costs.
Uh-huh.
And I wrote, I didn't write it. I put it up saying, you know, you don't have to be nice to dickhead. You don't have to be nice to people who are being assholes.
Yeah.
You know, kindness is not. Oh, that's a kindness is not about being nice to people who are treating you like who are being an asshole to you.
Yeah.
And it led to a really good discussion because I was like, I would consider myself a very, very kind person, but I'm also and I'm very good with boundaries.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't take nonsense. So a
Yeah.
lot of my old managers and stuff and people who worked with me are like, she's very kind, but she doesn't suffer fools and she doesn't take nonsense. But then I would have had to develop that when working in probation with people who were abusing women. So I would have had to be modeling this is what respect. So whenever they were used to, say, if they were misogynistic and they're used to disrespecting women, I would have been like, no, that's not acceptable.
Yeah.
Because my job was to encourage them to know what respect was with women.
All right, and to grow.
To grow and
Yeah.
to actually reduce the likelihood that they were going to do it again. So by me accepting like disrespect and stuff, it wasn't actually me doing my job. So that's where I would have
Sure.
developed that. Then in construction, they got me in. Because men in building industries are highly stressed and they can be, I had to enforce that they had 20% of the local population employed on the sites, whereas they naturally would have wanted to get cheaper labour.
Right, yeah.
So whenever you're dealing with very full-on masculine energy,
Yeah.
you need a strong, assertive woman to be
Right.
able to get that job done.
Yeah. Need to-
But that's where those skills are kind of like, I can identify when I'm being disrespectful, but it can often be hard for people whenever the boundaries go up, when
Yeah.
they assert, because it's not pleasant.
Yeah.
But that strength was what I was paid for in many roles. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
So I was trying to say to my friend, yes, you can be very, very kind, but you can also keep yourself safe.
Yeah.
Remind yourself of your worth
Uh-huh.
and stand up for yourself
Yeah.
if you're being treated badly.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. And that's respect for yourself as well, isn't it?
Yes.
Because you're in a relationship with yourself as you are as much with other people.
Always.
Yeah.
It's so important. But then it can be like, there can be a concern because you want to feel good and you want to treat people well. So that's where my learning's been in the refinement, because I wasn't necessarily aware of my strength
Right. Well, you felt like it was,
at times.
what's the word?
It was scary.
You
Not
feel
for
you-
me, for
yeah,
others
other
sometimes. So it's kind of like, okay, my intentions are not to intimidate and scare you,
people. Uh-huh.
but let's talk about this a bit.
Yeah.
And sometimes a lot of people want to run for the hills, which makes you think, oh no, don't run for the hills.
Yeah.
I'm not that scary. I'm actually really lovely
Yeah.
and cuddly and soft.
Uh-huh.
But people, I suppose it's a lot about conflict, and people are scared of it.
Yeah. I guess, and how people handle it, and like, I guess this is the thing. You see it in reality shows as well. That's where you see a lot of conflict. I don't know if you're getting much reality, but you see a lot of conflict, and I think a lot of people handle conflict this way. Where how often in a reality show do people deal with the conflict by like walking away from the conversation?
I hate what they do in reality shows.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Exploitation
Yeah.
of vulnerable.
Yeah. Oh, very vulnerable.
And
people.
it's like they pressure cooker
Yeah.
and they get the emotions charged
Yeah.
up and they want to see them lose their shit.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And whenever it happens, people deal with it by having a bit of conflict, and then they go away and they stew upon it a bit, and then they come back and have a bit more, and then it gets too much again, and they leave the room, and like, you know, it never really gets properly solved, and it doesn't get solved by hiding away and stewing upon it, or putting two people together in a room and making them duke it out. It's caused by maybe taking someone away for a break, yes,
Yeah.
and to think about it, sure,
Yeah.
but also to put people back in the room and make them talk in a way that is honest and respectful,
Yes.
without being like attacking, because that's the only way it's going to get through.
And
When people feel attacked-
mediation.
well, that's kind of what mediation is, isn't it? Really, it's saying, can you understand that this makes someone else feel like this? Do you understand that this makes someone else feel like this? I'm sure you've read The Gift of Therapy. I know because it's right behind me.
There, yeah.
Great book. I would recommend it, but I'm pretty sure you've all read it. But there's a great bit in there where it's like with feedback, strike while the iron is cold, which luckily I do kind of naturally, because I don't realize something's pissed me off till a day or two later. But it says that, maybe when something awakens a certain response, and you should probably tell someone, but tell them at an easier time as well. Like, well, the example he gives in the book was maybe a client does something that makes him feel distant and driven away, something in the manner of speech, I can't quite remember, but he waits till the next session where he says, I just, in that last session, whenever you did that, it actually makes me feel kind of distant from you, and it makes you feel unconnected. And then they were able to have a pretty rich discussion on how maybe that's something that person does in other relationships in their life. And it was fruitful therapy, basically.
Awesome. And can I do another quote?
Of course, yeah, quote away.
Any conflict can be rooted to the fact that usually someone's feelings got hurt.
Oh yeah, definitely, yeah. I mean, who has conflict over just practical things?
But I mean, I think you can take that to a global level.
Oh yeah.
You take that to nearly any.
Who's the person in the global level? Is it like a voter?
You mean in
voter
country?
base?
Like any conflict comes from the fact that people's feelings get hurt.
Yeah, absolutely.
And or fear, like they're just like, what are you doing? Or how can this be? Or just sadness, I suppose, a lot of times. But it can turn to fear, like that. That anger and the rage you were describing, that to me straight away screams like injustice. You thought it was unjust what was happening.
Sure.
The treatment you're receiving over something that you really hadn't meant. You hadn't meant it. It wasn't intentional. Your intentions were not to be a unkind person. You just didn't respond. But the conflict was the feelings were raw. There were emotions.
Did you? I'm sorry. I'm about to lower us into the gutter. But did you? Do you know? I didn't watch it, but I'm aware that there was. Kim from How Clean Is Your House was on Celebrity Big Brother a few years ago.
I kind of don't know.
I don't know. She's sort of. Well, she's an aggressive woman. I think she.
I
be
know.
Hard pushed to disagree with that herself, even. But she was on Celebrity Big Brother, and of course, pressure cooker TV, as you say. The conflict arose between her and some housemates, and it was horrible. And the UK TV audience loved it probably, but like a few months later, they brought her on Loose Women with somebody else from that house. To they were told so they could try and sort it out, but it wasn't. It was so it would be more good TV, and of course it was like complete just horror fest of an argument and stuff. And this is the bit that stuck out to me. So at one point, the argument's about to peak, and Kim suddenly says, she suddenly says, I've been through some horrible things, like I've been abused and all that. So one of the people who was arguing with her about 30 seconds before suddenly kind of puts her guns down because she's trying to be vulnerable. And she puts a hand on her shoulder and says, "Oh, I'm really sorry about that, right?" And then Kim says, "Don't be fucking two-faced," and knocks her hand away. And I think that, like, okay, so conflict's like a two-faced thing, because on the one hand you're pissed off, that's one face, and then on the other hand you're there's always at least a party that's trying to sort something out. And to switch between one or the other can appear deceptive to people who have their defenses up, like Kim in that scenario. I don't think I think me in first name terms with Kim is never watched it in my life, and suddenly I'm completely immersed in the drama. It's good TV probably.
Yeah, but it's But you see that, though, straight away, right? So straight away, that is a manipulation tactic that she tried to drop. Now, this is not judgment. This is just
No.
basically observation. Sounds like she was using. Right, so like somebody treats you really, really badly.
Yes.
That could be gaslighting. Because they go, well, how dare you? Because I was abused as a child.
Yes,
That's why I
she's
just
very-
treated you really, really badly.
Like, she was very vague. I personally didn't quite believe her because she was incredibly vague. But I think at the one hand, that was her. That was an opportunity to bridge it a little, because it was just not. It was not aggression for 1 minute.
It sounds to me like her desperately craving some compassion.
Yeah.
So she was using a tool to dry. Now, the reason I would talk about gaslighting is because sometimes, and they use it in politics and they use it in lots of situations, and I have loads of experience of this too, because they'll distract. It distracts from the issue.
Yeah.
So if you're trying to deal with something in a respectful, calm manner, and somebody brings in a completely different issue, then it's a distraction. So you start actually
Absolutely.
thinking about that.
Sure.
And then, so she distracted, she got the compassion, and then she was able to say, look at how horrible she is and two-faced.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, that is not saying that she's a bad person. That's saying that these are tactics
Yeah.
that she is using to try and get her way.
I'm probably completely unaware of it as well.
Absolutely. Because they're a tactic she has adopted, coping mechanisms
Yeah.
she has adopted over her life to facilitate her getting. We all want what we want.
Yeah.
And she obviously wants everybody, black or white thinking, good or bad,
Yeah.
to think she's right about everything.
Yeah.
Or possibly her views are their life. Like, this is it. She knows the secrets to the universe and the way that we should all be behaving. And that signals to me trauma. Because whenever, and my supervisor spoke about this, so if you're a healthy person with good thinking, you can accommodate lots and lots and lots of experiences and things like that, right? If you're traumatized, the number of experiences, it shrinks. And actually what happens, he says, is the person who's been traumatized will go to even greater lengths to control those around them.
Well, that seems pretty textbook of what's going on there. Like,
yes, they will. They're the fear, the anger will be immense to try and control, because their need to control the environment is so great.
Yeah.
That they use very, very, very powerful and strong methods, but it's connected to the trauma.
Yeah.
With it, so their need to control the environment. Whereas, like, whenever you start, like, and this is something that's really, and I'm still developing this over time. Live and let them do their stuff. They're not actually the way. It's not a reflection of me. It's a reflection of their thoughts. You know, there are things that will still impact me, but I don't need to control other people. Like, it's like, leave me be and leave you be, or I support you. But I suppose the idea is respect. The greater the respect I have for myself, the less I have tolerated disrespect from others.
Right. Wow.
And that's what I think, and that's where people will consider that disrespectful to them. But I'm like this. No, I hope you have a great life. Good luck with everything. We're not in it together.
Yeah.
Because I don't actually like the way you've treated me.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's not like I want anything bad to happen to them.
No.
I'm just more fussy about who I spend my time and my energy with.
I think, yeah, like, there's so much to what you just said there, and I'm trying to unpack it as well. Like,
Yeah, sorry I went on a bit.
How dare you talk on this podcast?
I don't even know what I just said.
Well, I think we started talking about the Kim and the behavior.
Oh yes,
but it became
trauma.
But it became about self-respect, didn't it?
Oh yes,
and self-acceptance, and how that is kind of the basis of being bullshit proof. But
well, or just actually the respect. You're like, I'm like this. I think I am very kind to people. I think I am very good to people, and I don't think it's too much to ask for that in return.
No,
and that's self-respect.
Yeah, it is. It is. And then I guess the real difficulties just come in the nuance of what is respect to each person, and it's usually there's a pretty much solid baseline, but culture changes it, you know.
Yes.
And yeah, well,
Oh, but that's another thing. Sorry.
No.
What were you say? What were you going to say?
Oh, I was going to go on to a different subject. So you
I was just going to say about one of the things that recently has come up is buttons.
buttons?
You know, knowing your buttons, the things that really get you going.
Sure, yeah.
So obviously in the last few years I've learned that my button is do not mess with my kids. That's
Aye.
a big button. Stay the hell away from the button about messing with my children. Like just all, I'm putting it out there.
Yeah.
I didn't realise it was that much of a button, but it is. So,
Wow, okay.
So learning that means that actually I'm aware of, okay, this has happened, don't like it, breathe, and then you can respond.
You have a bit more control.
But I had to learn that button existed
Yeah.
before I realised how much of a button it was.
Yeah.
But recently I had somebody I know, and a button was pressed, but her button was somebody telling lies.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, she just couldn't. She was like, "That's it, done." But that's another thing with respect and relationships. Sometimes we don't know the buttons. Sometimes we can't, because with me, lines are crossed. But actually, it's not necessarily that generous of me because other people can't see that line. That line, I think, stems from my childhood and me being treated badly by people in positions of power, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So that button means that don't do it now. I'm not accepting it because I remember what it was like.
Yeah.
So that's my button, right? But hers was from her. So that's another thing. It's being aware that we're all different and we will have different triggers.
Yeah. Like our history and our feelings determine where our lines are, and they're different for each person. And
yes,
you can't know where someone else is, but you can be aware that it's somewhere else. It's not where yours is probably, but it's
Yeah. There you go. So that was my little button thing, because the respect thing is a wee clapping.
Thank you, yeah.
So how long? What have
We've done about 55 minutes. I still want to cover some stuff though.
What would you like to cover?
Well, I was thinking about just game theory there. Whenever you were talking about the Kim stuff, that what you were describing was very much like in transactional analysis they call it a game people play. You know, that game of parent, adult, child. So for those unfamiliar, I'll skim it, but so transactional analysis is a counselling theory that says in most social interactions you're one of three positions, which is sometimes it's defined as like a victim, persecutor, rescuer, which is another, there's a lot to that as well, but usually it's parent, adult, child. So a parent talks down to the child and the child is defensive from the parent. So in most arguments you might see this happening where you go, you did this wrong, or you're just going, oh, stop telling me off. You know, that's parent, child. There's also nurturing parent, which is, you know, that's just whenever you're being quote unquote like too nice. Perhaps you're saying yes to a lot of things and you're being very lovely, but in a way you're also putting that person in the child position because it's complementary. And the adult's very much in the middle, which is from the position of like, I'm okay and you're okay. Like, we're both two sane people. So let's start right there. Whereas parent is like, I'm okay, you're not okay. And child is, I'm not okay, you're okay. You know, tell me what to do. And so Eric Byrne, who's the founder of TA, said that people play a lot of games, like quote unquote, I'm doing bunny ears. And that these games are often designed to, TA rather robotically sees every conversation as a transaction of sorts, but the games are designed to put people in certain positions for personal gain, I guess. So for example, the classic one to me is I think it's called Help Me Out, because he's got all these funny names for them. One of them's called I've Got You Now, You Son of a Bitch. I like that. But
I've got you now, you son of a bitch.
I've got you now, you son of a bitch, where you trap someone in their own little argument, I think it is. But in Help Me Out, it's you start off in the child position, and the other person starts in the sort of adult position. They're fine, and you say, oh, I've got this problem, can you give me some advice? And the other person is suddenly put in the parent position because they're like, well, you should do this, and the person in the child position goes, no, I can't do that for arbitrary reason or whatever. And it goes on. So you keep going, give me some advice, and they go, do this, and you go, oh, I can't do that. And then the other person goes, well, I've got no more advice for you. And then the originator in the child position suddenly gets to be in the parent position and say, well, you're not much use, are you? And puts the other person in the child position, and then they feel good about themselves.
Wow.
Some of it's kind of cutthroat, because like in the original games people play, they were saying that alcoholism is a game, and basically the game is like, I have a problem. I've got alcoholism. I put you in the child position. Help me, my parents, right? And that's your friends and family. You know, you put them in the parent position to sort of fix you, and then they sort of build you up into the adult position. And then in the game, it's almost purposely knocked down. They put themselves back in the child position by relapsing. And Eric Burns says that the purpose of the game isn't necessarily alcohol. Like, they're not necessarily seeking alcohol. They're saying what they're really getting from that game is a sort of high from the forgiveness of being put back into the adult position again for a moment.
Oh my goodness!
I don't really agree with that. I think it's very interesting.
Oh yeah, that's it though.
It's very interesting, but I don't agree with that at all. But
yeah, but as theorists, like, this is what they're putting forward a theory.
Sure.
They're like, this is also a helpful way to look. And I was taught this week.
Yeah.
I was looking at transactional analysis.
there's some good stuff there.
With my supervisor, and we were looking at the parent, the adult, the child, right?
Yeah.
And I'm looking around because he gave me a printout because I asked him, like, can I take this? I really love it. And what it was he talked about the dictator parent and the nurturing parent.
Right. Yeah, sorry.
And then
I said parent rather than
you said, but
critical and nurturing.
You mentioned nurturing.
Aye.
Saying like too nice, but that would be me.
Yeah.
Nurturing, but I wouldn't say I'm too. I just think love, unconditional regard.
Yeah.
So, but that's nurturing. So then the adult was like the logical, the rational.
Okay.
We come together. Now, this is what he said. This could be.
I would say nurturing is like a form of toxic nurturing, where you're just saying you're right all the time rather than just being nice.
Well, this is where we discussed it, right?
Sorry.
Because he was like, no, because he was like the dictator and the nurturing, right? And then the adult, and then the child was the adaptive child and the free child. So he was talking about, so the nurturing and the free child were in the one area, right? The one and the adult. And I was like, I really identify with this side. And I was like, I was like, this to me seems positive and really healthy. Whereas the adaptive and the dictator, the adaptive child is not to say what they want. They're adapted to the dictator parent.
Yeah.
I was like, this seems negative. Whereas actually a free child was considered creative. Emotional, free to be emotional, whereas actually whenever this was designed, free children weren't a thing.
Yeah, it was a pipe dream.
Yeah, because it was like,
thing, you know?
well, it's like they're creative, they're emotional, they're spontaneous. Now, spontaneous is another thing that a lot of people don't think is good, whereas I argue it keeps you safe because, and in Maslow's triangle actualization, self-actually at the very top, spontaneity
That's true.
is one of the marks of a fully actualized person.
True that.
Whereas we're often taught it's irresponsible. So say, I'll give you an example. I said I would do something with somebody historically, but then there was information that I got that they weren't trustworthy.
Okay.
So I changed my mind.
Yeah.
So, but I was slandered. I was told he tried to work with me and everything, but I was like, I can always change my mind. But he was trying to make me feel like that was an irresponsible thing to do. Whereas in light of abusive relationships, I would say you can always change your mind. But we're told it's not actually okay.
Wow. Right.
Do you see what
Yeah,
I mean?
I do actually, yeah.
Whereas, so spontaneity can actually keep you safe.
Yeah.
So that's why I thought
It's freedom in a way.
it's intuitive too.
Yeah.
It can be your intuition's going, I don't feel good, this doesn't feel right, this doesn't feel right. And you can like get yourself up from a room. It's like you listen to people who just didn't go to work that morning and then something happened at work or they didn't, near escapes, like things happened, they went the wrong way. And that might have been the intuition guiding them and supporting them.
Yeah.
Whereas we're not actually often told to listen and follow it. I just think we're given a lot of conflicting messages.
Yeah, oh, absolutely, yeah. Like, well, it's because people can't decide. I can't decide on one unified thing in any domain of life.
But that's brilliant too.
Well, it is, yeah. It means it gives you, as long as you're given the freedom to choose your own, you know.
Yeah.
What about something quickly about therapy?
What about therapy?
Well, what about respect in the therapy room?
Respect in the therapy room.
I think it's because Sorry, I've got two things in my mind. Can I?
Yes,
can I
go for it,
blur them
please.
quickly. Well, first of all, just that I think Adler was one of the big pioneers of respect in the therapy room because he was the first to bring a measure of equality to it. Whereas, early counselling was just all psychoanalysis, and it was all lie back on the couch and the analyst is behind you. You don't even see them. Whereas Adler was the first to have people on chairs facing each other.
Yes.
So there's an equality to it. And so I think that equality is a big part of respect in the therapy room. I think it varies from theory to theory because I think CBT, it's more like teamwork than two equals, and with person-centered, it's actually maybe a bit less equal. It's kind of going, you know more about you than I do, and
which just to me is always the truth.
I would agree with that generally myself, but I understand that there are differences, but I think there's a certain equality in that there's two people, but in terms of expertise, the client's the expertise on them,
Yeah.
are expert in them. But the other thing was, oh no, you know what? It's gone. I completely forgot.
I think that's possibly why this profession really, really, I love it so much, is because I'm all about egalitarianism.
Yeah.
And it just fits that. It's lovely.
Yeah.
To treat people, every person is important, every person matters, and every person's view is their truth, it's their experience, and it is really, it's lovely.
Yeah, and not just their view, but what they are, or what they're bringing to you.
And seeing people respond to that respect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is respect. Well, I actually, I remember the other thing was I had a client a few years ago, and things were going quite well, and then somebody who worked in the same counselling agency as me at the time was a neighbour of his and told me a story about him that affected how I would work with him. Because basically it meant he was at higher risk than he was letting on. And it altered the way I worked with him. And eventually that story turned out to not be true. And so respect is about not being an investigator into your client, I guess. It's about working with the client that's in front of you, not the client that's got all the stories about them outside. I really let myself get affected by a client's rumour mill, and I really shouldn't. That's just because, imagine if we've both been to therapy ourselves as part of our degrees. Imagine if whatever rumours have been spread about you were given to your therapist before you met them. Like,
that's contamination.
Completely. I got contaminated by that. Like, if so ever since then, like, anytime someone's got a story about the client, I go, don't fucking tell me that.
And that's also why I hate gossip.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's what it was. I just got gossiped. Like,
gossip is like gossip has no integrity, no accountability, and it's like attacking. You're attacking someone without them being able to defend themselves.
Yes,
and that's why I think it's very, very damaging when other people gossip about, and that's one of the things, and that's a boundary. If I find out the friends have been gossiping, I can't trust them. Yeah. And that's also possibly come as a reflection of this work. If there is no trust, there's no respect. And it's hard to have respect. I can respect them, but still not be willing to share my experiences, my lives, and my time with them. Yeah. But yes, that's it. Gossip, and think that's disrespectful. That's incredibly disrespectful.
It is, yeah, because like it basically meant I was just working towards a therapeutic dead end with someone who, like, had no idea why I was going in this direction, and I don't think it damaged therapy too much, but it really could have. It really could have fucked it up. And like, what really got to me was the irresponsibility of it. That of the person who told me that. I asked them about it a few months after I found out it wasn't true, and they went, "Oh, I don't even remember telling you that. Like, how can you not remember talking to me about somebody I'm working with? Like, but that's so important."
But once you start thinking of everything as lessons,
yeah.
What's the lesson for me? What's the learning?
What's the meaning of this experience? It's that whole Frankel thing. What have we decided that this means to us? Yeah, and I guess it's taught me that not to, like, just meet the person who's there, not hear anything from outside, and also not to do the same thing, like keep my big fat mouth shut. I mean, I've never had it open in terms of clients, but it's such an important reminder.
And
Yeah.
also, what people say is a projection, or it's a reflection of them. So I often think with gossip, people, it's self-soothing.
Yeah.
So people are trying to make themselves feel better. It's hierarchical. So they're
Yeah.
trying to say, look at how much they're fucking up. That means
Yeah.
I'm winning, or that
Yeah.
kind of thing comes up a lot in the podcasts. That kind of a projection. Like if you are like kind of spreading rumors or spreading misinformation, or how can you be completely sure what is going on with in the lives of other people?
Aye. It's just not.
But the people would say small minds talk about people,
Yeah.
and medium minds talk about events, and great minds talk about ideas.
Wasn't it? Yeah.
Yes.
I can never remember that quote.
So and
Too
then
busy talking about people.
but I do talk about people, but I do try and keep it very. I would really celebrate people a lot, like celebrate people I love, and I've been hurt by people, and I'll talk about it. But often it's about trying to understand, process. I got beyond hating people.
Yeah.
I don't do. It's not, but I do. Have. Yeah, there's a lot of people I'm not particularly fond of, but there's a lot of people I absolutely adore and have a lot of time, and if I was to talk about them, I would talk about them in a very positive light.
Yeah.
Like what they're doing, what they've achieved, what inspires me about them. And talking about others like that, like you'd said about it, it's kind of cheating in a way, because it feels really good
Yeah.
to talk about people like that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we're not here to condemn gossips, but we're just, I think it's important to know that it's a little addiction, isn't it? It's a little unhealthy
also,
habit.
It's damaging to them and
it's-
to the other.
yeah.
It is damaging to yourself.
Oh yeah, it is. It's a wound outside and in.
Yeah. Who was it? This is we'll have to stop soon.
Wrap it up.
But here's this might be a good upper. Is
Okay.
it Confucius?
Wrap away.
Confucius?
Yeah, we
good old
discussed this
Confucius
before the recording.
said, respect yourself and others will respect you.
Ah, Confucius. Famous,
Obviously didn't live in
famous
Northern Ireland in
Yeah.
2018.
famous rapper, wasn't he? Confucius. This is from his second album.
Confucius, I think, in your day things were a bit. But I like that.
Yeah.
Respect yourself.
Well, it's so true, isn't it? You respect yourself and it bleeds through. It's visible. It's like that old Roald Dahl quote about people who are nice. It shines through in their face like sunlight. Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah, sunbeams, yeah.
Be kind, or you think kind thoughts or positive
Aye.
thoughts, and they will shine out of your face like sunbeams.
Yeah. And people always think you're lovely.
Yes. All right. So that was that.
That was that.
Yeah,
This
so
is us
this is
signing
it.
off. We're going to jingle.
A jingle.
Do you want to lead and I'll follow? Well, that's a big old no-no.
Okay. So thank you very much for tuning in. And this has been Therapy Geeks.
Thanks for listening to Therapy Geeks. Find us on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Podcast Addict, Deezer, Listen Notes, Stitcher, Podcast Index, and Buzzsprout. Give us a like or a follow or a subscription, whatever your podcast app allows. Thanks for listening.